So today I wanted to talk about logic, and I really wanted to um, I want to give you my whole and holistic perspective on the uses of logic and how you can use logic to help you, how logic is fundamental to everything that we do, and how kind of get into some of the interesting aspects of logic and how it's misused, um, and kind of get into the nuances of it. And so, in order to do that, one of the things I wanted to do is provide a real life example, real time articulation, exercising logic to explain something to you, um, to bring you some interesting facts provided by logic. So, um, really briefly, I just want to put out there, um, I never thought that I would start making videos this way. Um, I would I much rather have a conversation with a person, because my flow is more natural in response to people. Um, and making videos, just kind of lecturing, is not exactly my style, but something that I feel I should get more comfortable with. And I just want to say thank you for anybody who is watching and is listening, um, and bearing with me through the process of learning to lecture on these topics and make them interesting. Um, one of my biggest um, one of my biggest stars, or my biggest influences, someone I look up to, is Alan Watts, and the way he's able to hold the attention and captivate a room, um, simply within the mode of speaking and questioning his own thoughts. If you haven't heard Alan Watts before, I highly, highly recommend going and listening to Alan Watts. Incredible speaker and incredible philosopher. So, with that being said, I'm going to give you some interesting things about time and explain to you why they are logical, and how I can utilize and how you can utilize logic to reveal certain things about your life and certain things about reality, um, to uh, identify truth. And so we'll start at the basis of logic. What is logic, right? So logic is a determinative tool that we use to define truth, or which we use to identify truth. And so I'm going to get into determinative tool. Within the word itself, what I like to focus on a lot of the time when I do communicate, if you haven't noticed, is the meaning of words. Oftentimes, communication can go far and beyond in the wrong direction and be miscommunicated, due to the fact that we don't actually know what we're saying or know what is being told to us. Um, so, the word itself, determinative, if we break it down and we look into where it comes from, deter or deter is the ability to refer away. Like, refer is to connect a point, deter is to disconnect a point. So determinative, and we've have deter, me, and native. And so native, I think most people understand, native is natural or existing based on the subject environment, right? And then me has a few possible interpretations, but what we will say, and to keep it within a narrower context, more specificity, is that me is reflective of my, or the Spanish mine, Latin mine. And so determinative is meaning that it's going to be, it is a tool which you can use to break away different ideas based around what is natural to your existing environment. So that is the fundamental concept and the basis of logic. That you are going to set up a system based on evidence, or based on, typically within logic, you make a proposition. You propose that something is true, or you propose that something is false. And then we analyze how that statement could be supported, or how it could be weakened or falsified. So let's get into the example. So when we look at time, I like to always pose a question in order to begin my logical analysis, because something that is requirement of philosophy is asking questions. And as most people who spend any time understanding philosophy is actually all about asking good questions. And if you are able to ask better and better questions, you will have better and better answers. It's an interesting benefit of philosophy that the better question you ask, the better answer you get. It's also a pitfall of philosophy that the type of question that you ask, or the nature or the quality of the question you ask, will in turn reflect the answer that you receive. So typically we get a lot of people caught up in very simplistic, very sort of what I see as like a flat line question, very monotone, and the answer has become very monotone. And I'll try not to get too deep into that right now. So looking at time, let's ask, what is time? And so there's a few different answers that we have. Time is a construct that man has developed in order to organize society and organize his things, and to communicate. It is a tool. Time is a tool. So that we'll call that answer number one. What else is time? Time is, we could use a scientific definition, which for an atomic clock, I think is something like some manipulation of the half-life decay of cesium-47, or I don't know exactly what it is, but it's it's relying upon or based upon some physical property that happens that we can measure, and call it a microsecond or a nanosecond, and then we just add those up to build a full second, and so on and so forth. And just to keep it simple, we'll only go into 3 answers for now. Could also say that time is an interesting answer. Time is not real. There's no such thing as time. We'll get into the argument of that. One of my favorite answers to that question, and surprisingly, you're able to get that answer from the simple question of what is time. So let's look at answer number one. Time is a construct made by man to organize things within society and to communicate in order to, again, organize things within society. And in that basis, we understand that time allows us to project into the future and also to track the present and the past, allowing a comprehension or a concept of predictability and establishing routines and patterns based on timeliness. And we can also look at the aspect of that which tracks the sun, tracks the amount of daylight, the rotation of the earth, that a particular point has completed a full revolution by the time of 24 hours. And so we understand time from that perspective. Hard to go anywhere logically from that. And so I will say that is a fact. That is one way that you can view time. That is a fair statement. Because we have evidence which can substantiate the claim. Now, looking at the second argument, once again, falls into a very similar category, very similar breakdown, that we have evidence that things change at a particular rate, which we are able to associate with a particular amount of time passing. And that is, again, simply an evidence-based following sort of the mathematical scientific approach, the trickle down, this is what it is. Or here's a way to define it. The third one, which is actually most interesting in my opinion, and the point really of what I'd like to talk to you about, is that I would like to suggest to you that time actually does not exist, and it is not a real thing. This is quite literally self-evident at all times. But the existence of time itself is made up of all of these different observations that we have and calculations therefrom that we propose there is some set time. However, when we get into looking at time and looking at the passage of time, things get a little bit complicated. So when we look at time as like a measurement or time as a tool, It's very simple. Answers 1 and 2 suffice. But when we look at time as, really fundamentally, what is it? What is time? And we don't take, these coincidental patterns or these definitions, these fundamental, definitions that have been used to develop a construct, and get into what is time itself. There's a rather simple answer. And the answer of time is the perception of change. And so when we look at that, time only exists when there is a perceivable variance. That's it. That is it. So, you hear people say, like, time stood still, or everything froze, right? And in those moments in our lives, like, say, for example, you get an adrenaline spike, or you're having a reflex, and, I was a pitcher in baseball. This is probably something a lot of pitchers can relate to. When you get a ball hit right back at you, either one of two things happens. Either time slows down and you like slow-mo the ball, and catch it, or time goes like boom, and you don't even really know what happened, but you felt a couple things, and either you're all right or you got hit or something happened. The ball went by you or something. And it's interesting that the human experience has moments like that where we can perceive a fluctuation in the passage of time. And that is, frankly, very reminiscent of Einstein's theory of relativity, whereas objects or things approach the speed of light, their perception of time will actually slow down. And so then we, go back to the fundamental answer that I just offered you, is that time is the perception of change. Therefore, if we look at things as they are, meaning what is apparent, at any given moment, we have only the present. And, this has been talked about before. This is nothing new. People constantly talk about how we're three-dimensional beings. And if we were four-dimensional beings, things would be crazy and so much different. You would simultaneously be yourself at birth and yourself right before you die. And frankly, I disagree with those arguments, because if we were purely three-dimensional, we would not perceive time whatsoever, which is clearly not true. We permeate we undergo change, which shows time, but we do not ourselves have the ability to view the scope of time outside of our imagination. So time is not actually included within our physical reality, except for the capacity for the exact present moment that we are in. And because of that, again, based purely off of what is evident and not what is speculated, not what's theoretical, not what we could, potentially have, but what is literally, time actually doesn't quite exist. It's more so enacted. It's more so um, something that only exists because we are able to perceive changes. Um, and so the reason that I say this in the way that I'm going to logically break this down is that we cannot enter the past, right? Everything that I've said in the last 20 minutes is not attainable. It has already been, and it always will be as it was. And there is nothing to be done. And we look at the future. It is coming, and it is unknown. There is very little which I can do to say precisely what it will be outside of enacting something in this very moment in order to determine it. And it's very interesting that we are actually in the present itself, because we are simultaneously the command for the future and the past. And in that sense, if there is no difference between the future and the past except what we determine in the present, then the passage of time doesn't exist. So let me make that clear. I can predict the future. I can make a prediction about the future. And I can be 100% accurate as long as I stay within a particular scope. I can say within 3 seconds, I will raise my right arm next to my face. Oh, that's weird. Right? Nobody thinks about how that is actually a proper way to predict the future. To make a prediction about something that you can certify by your will to occur, and then follow through. And at the same time, I can predict that sometime in the past, I will have raised my left hand next to my face. And now it's true. So I kind of feel like I'm going around in circles here. I kind of feel like what I'm saying isn't actually proving my point very well. But I would love to give more details and explain deeper as to why this is actually true and why it literally works, and what it's based on. So when we look at physical reality, we are not living in a three-dimensional world. We perceive 3 dimensions, to be sure, but to break it down to 3 dimensions is just not fully understanding what's going on. And we actually have, like I mentioned this before in different videos, but we have a lot more than 5 senses. Humans don't function purely off of sight, sound, taste, touch, and feeling, or taste and touch are the same thing. Why do I always forget the 5th? We got sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. Okay, there we go. So those are the 5 that are always talked about. Those are the five that um, were taught, right? But we actually have more than that. We have more senses that we can utilize. They're just generally not accepted by science because we don't have the capacity to measure them, which is a failure of the instruments that we've produced in order to measure things, and not the failure, or excuse me, not um, because it's untrue or because it's false. Um, we just don't know how to prove whether it's true or not. And since we're so obsessed with the things that we can prove, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, um, we derail from things that haven't been proven yet. And then we just sort of disregard them. And that's why, not to speak negatively or too broadly, but American culture is kind of played, displayed as this very plain, we don't really have culture and all this stuff um, because we let go of it, because we don't really look at things that do make our culture, and we're an independent society. Uh, Again, not a bad thing, but and every time I speak with my fellow Americans and my neighbors and people I don't even know, um, I find out that they're real people, right? Like I think everybody in the U.S. Deserves respect and is, clearly a valuable and uh, worthwhile individual most of the time, um, and just because there's not uh, a cohesive structure to our culture at the moment doesn't mean that we should disrespect each other, right? That's just basic decency. Absolutely should remain. Um, I see people getting a little bit flippant with that nowadays, and I don't know if people really realize that the way that you treat others reflects more on how you are than it does on how they are. Um, and that's kind of, you know, we're we're pushing borderlines there with how it comes down to respect and common decency with people. Um, totally off topic, doesn't relate to us talking about time existing, whether or not it's a real thing or if it's just a thing that we made up to, um, thing that we made up in order to track things and organize our lives. Um, but really, all time is a measurement of change. And so, one thing I want to impress upon you is that in every single moment, based on the fact that the future is unknown and that the future could be composed of any given event. I mean, literally anything. There could be, like, let's say, for example, there could be a major malfunction with NASA's equipment right now. They didn't detect this asteroid that's actually going to come and boom, the whole planet, like me in the middle of this sentence, boom, boom, gone. Whole planet, or the whole US, whatever. Or, maybe just the comms are down. Maybe we get like Russia could be tossing a nuke up into the stratosphere and explode and give us a little EMP and cut out all of our communication channels, which is a real thing if you didn't know about that. Not to give you nightmares or anything, um, anything can happen. Okay, so I'm using dramatic things that people typically aren't going to think about. Literally, the future is completely 100% unpredictable unless you refine it to a certain scope. Based on the fact that the future is completely unpredictable, we can assume, using logic, that every single possible future event will occur. and utilizing that projection, saying every single possible event could occur. My arm could be here, 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 and everywhere in between, right? In the next 1 second. Oh, but it wasn't. Okay, that's not the point. The point is that it could be. And so if we take that and we extrapolate, there are an infinite amount of possibilities that could be occurring in the near future. Now, what the future is the will to enact the change that you would perceive to align with or to fulfill the predicted future. And so this is kind of interesting, especially with cameras. It works a lot better, but you can do this in real life too. It's pretty interesting. So I'd like to suggest to you that to my right, there are an infinite number of my arms in different positions out in front of me. And at any given moment, the present me can make an action based on my will, which is an energy transfer, to develop a perceivable change that is a movement of energy, and that movement of energy will reflect the passage of time. And so I'll just do this, right? So my arm came up in a moment, right? Took a moment for the arm to come up. Now the arm is here. Now, if I were to move my arm somewhat quickly, and if you pay attention, you'll actually see my energy moving through all of the different possibilities. This is extremely, this is incredible because you can actually perceive it, and you can do it yourself. You can go stand in the mirror, and if you pay attention, you'll see it. It's not a camera trick. It's real. This is real life. You can see this, and it's evident. I will take my arm, I will move it through space. And within space, we must not forget that space is consistent of a space-time continuum. And when I move my energy through this space-time continuum, my energy can be seen in these multiple different realities, in these multiple different possibilities, these different phases, which are reflected in what is literally the fractal reality that we live in. And so I'm going to do it again and try to see if you can watch my energy catch up. And so basically what it looks like is my arm will go up, and then there's a trail. There's a little bit of a tail, and my arm actually has to catch up to itself. And that's my mind taking my energy and moving it to a place, and then all of my consciousness, everything that I perceive, has to catch up to where that new location is. Okay? It happens really fast, but you can see it. And that is what time is. Time is actually energy shifting. And there is not any one particular way which produces a second outside of what we define it to be. This is why, time flies when you're having fun. And why, things slow down when you're going through a dramatic or traumatic experience. This is why time can seem to not occur sometimes. It's even why you can go to sleep, you can lay your head down, and you can wake up and it's a new day. And it's as if nothing happened. So time itself really is determined by the transfer of energy. And the transfer of energy is made up of many, many other things. So my main point for talking about all this is really to get people to think in a different way and to help people understand that things are not as you necessarily perceive them to be or as you've been told to perceive them. Um, and that there actually is a very interesting thing going on here in reality. Um, and that for the past 35 minutes that I've been speaking to you, um, does it really feel as though it's been 35 minutes? That will completely depend on the energy that you've put into the experience. It could feel like we've been talking for an hour. It could feel like we've been talking for 15 minutes, right? But all of these um, mechanisms that we have to describe time are going to tell you what time has been. In reality, it's far more important that you as a human, in your experience, in your life, you recognize that time is subjective completely, right? I mean, yes, there is objective passage of time, and we see that with the movement of the clock, the hours tick, so be it. That's not important. What is important is that you recognize your experience of time, because it is your time. And your time, you will never get until you take it. Okay? When I considered what my life was meant to be about, excuse me. When I considered what my life was meant to be about and why I was here, and what things mean, I was really, really questioning the validity of my existence. I'm just going to get deep on y'all because that's what I do. There was a period in my life where I could not reason why I needed to exist and why I persisted. And I considered that perhaps I shouldn't. And I had to find out, I literally had to find out why I was alive, or I would simply refuse to be. And I gave myself an ultimatum. I said that I would find my purpose by my 18th birthday, and I would understand my life, or I would no longer have one. So I learned a lot putting myself on that path and that trajectory. And obviously, as you see, I'm still here and I'm not younger than 18. So, yeah, I want everyone to realize that your time is solely yours. No one will ever know what it means to live your life through your eyes, except you. And in that way, you are infinitely valuable. Now, in that same way, in order to feel the value that you have, it's not a matter of just sitting there, you know, what some people end up doing is just stroking their ego, just saying, oh, I'm important, oh, I'm special because I'm me, and therefore that's my whole point. What will help you find value is in honoring your perspective and honoring the fact that you are the only one who can successfully be you. And in order to really, truly fulfill that and to be who you are, you have to go through a process of uncovering and removing what you are not. And not enough people take that seriously. And when you are struggling with understanding yourself and knowing what your value is and what your purpose is and why you should care about things, what you're really struggling with is a knowledge of yourself. You just haven't figured out who you are. And that's okay. But it's not acceptable. And that, I mean that. And if you're going to live your life, you're doing yourself a disservice. And you're doing the people around you a disservice. If you're not willing to humble yourself and come to terms with the fact that you deserve your own respect and you deserve genuine compassion, meaning that you can forgive yourself and be renewed, that when you wake up tomorrow, it's truly a new day and you have a fresh mind and a whole heart with the true opportunity to set a new precedence for who you are. And in doing that, you will exercise the highest level of love for both yourself and those around you that you possibly can. And I don't want people to get caught up in the timeliness of everything. The reason that I bring it up is because we just don't know. We just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And tomorrow could set you free. And you would never see it coming unless you gave yourself the opportunity to set yourself free. The one thing that holds people back and the one thing that makes this so crucial is that no one can do it for you. No one can unbar your perception except you. And you have to be willing to open your eyes and open your mind, engage with your senses, go beyond the 5 that we know. Use some imagination. Go, spend 5 minutes trying to determine what your gut feeling is about something and then go follow it. Just go follow it. Go do something that rides purely on intuition and see what happens. In order to get out of what constantly holds us, we have to enact change. When you're under duress, if you're stressed out, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, time goes like that, or it goes like this. And it's not fair to yourself. And I want you to know that. It's not fair to you to do that. And now I'm not blaming you, because I did it. I've done it. And what I learned was that it wasn't fair to do that. And in order to be fair, you have to give yourself a chance to recognize a change in the right direction. And the right direction isn't going to look like whatever your mind's got it chalked up to be. Because, I mean, man, before a snowdrop or a snowflake, a perfectly unique individual practically a miracle is ever formed and ever witnessed, there is a whole huge amount of things that have to happen. You have to have the right atmosphere, you have to have the right temperatures, the right humidity, the right pressures. And as it comes down, it starts as just the tiniest little nano thing that you can't even see. And it comes down, and slowly, over time, these little bits and pieces, unpredictable, create this beautiful pattern and this truly unique treasure to behold in the moment for which it exists. And within the grand scheme of the universe and our life, sometimes it can be overwhelming to realize that we don't know what happens tomorrow. And I recognize that there's a bright side to that and a dark side to that. I want you to realize and recognize that within the dark aspects of not knowing what tomorrow brings, as you address that day in and day out over time, you'll come to appreciate the rainy days, and you'll come to appreciate when the sun doesn't shine as brightly. Because sometimes when the sun shines so bright, it gets hot and it gets unbearable. And if you don't go outside much, that is a fantastic place to start. You don't have to like going outside. You don't have to care about nature even though I really hope someday you do. But get yourself up, put on some sufficient clothing for the weather at hand, and go outside and just look. See what animals are doing. See how the plants are. Check out the sky. And try to do it at different times of the day. Sometimes in the summer, the midday just looks the same over and over and over and over. But when we see the sunrise, or if we watch the sunset, those can be really good things. That there's something guttural about it. There's just something in your stomach. You're like, man, I'm glad I saw that. And you will appreciate the time that you took to do something that you didn't think you wanted. And that's powerful. When we learn to appreciate the things that we didn't think we wanted. And so for now, that's all I have. Appreciate whoever stuck through this long. Again, like I said in the beginning, I'm still figuring this stuff out. I would like to get into a more play into some different styles of presentation and absorption. And really, I want to start doing podcasts because I really enjoy having these conversations with live interaction. And I think that there's so much more insightful and meaningful when there is another person to reflect information off of. And I'll probably be revisiting a lot of these topics that I touch on in my initial videos over time, over the next year or so, putting them into a more digestible form for people who can appreciate them and do follow. I don't expect that most people have 53 minutes to listen to some random bearded long-haired dude on YouTube talk about life and stuff like that. But I do expect that I will reach the right people with the right message at the right time. And if that's you in this moment, I truly appreciate your presence, and I humbly honor you with the knowledge that I've shared. And I wish for you to enact some of the guidance that which is relevant to you that I've shared, and hope that you benefit and prosper from it. As I said, that's all for now, and thank you for watching. Peace.